Okay, so good morning.
Good morning.
We're here to kind of go over your feedback from the observation that took place yesterday, Ms. Habtemriam. So we've already shared the form with you last night after we completed it. So we'll get to running through some things as we move forward. But before we get started, I always want to ask this question first. How do you think your observation went?
I think it went well. I think my students did a lot better than my last observation. Um, I think it went well. And I
Okay.
think I got my point across, and it was a review, and a lot of them I still had to go back, like I was teaching it
Mm-hmm.
fresh and new because it is kind of old.
Mm-hmm.
But I think overall, my students did well.
And the point, that's got to be your outcome. So what was your outcome for today?
My outcome was that they knew how to do the strategy of elapsed time, and they knew how to tell time to the minute.
Okay. All right. So I'll do the commendable things and then we can start with the questions. So during the observation there were a good amount of things that we saw that we thought were positive. And I'll read the first two and I'll let the guy do the last two. Your small group rotations appeared to be more purposeful and organized, which is a good thing because we were talking about how to eliminate some of that downtime and how to get the kids to moving quicker so that we can increase the time on task. So I thought that was a good thing. And the students demonstrating their understanding through the use of models constructed on a number line. You're really good about models, whether they're doing it in Nearpod or whether they're doing it on whiteboards. So that's something that's important. So always, always, always make sure that you have them use models to kind of justify their response.
And also, you have anchor charts that is on the eye level of the students. And one student yesterday was actually using your anchor chart when she was completing her independent work. So that was really good. And also utilizing techniques when you are with your small group and engaging them with the discussion. So that was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's move to our questions. We had
Okay.
3 questions. You go ahead.
Yep. So the first question was yesterday, I noticed that a lot of students were using Prodigy. So, how are you using Prodigy to assess student level of understanding?
So I actually pulled it up, and it gives me like a breakdown of like how much time that they use, the average time that they use on each question. So I pulled up one of my students, and sometimes I even use this for grouping. So like if I see like she's getting 40% of the time word problems incorrect, I may put her in a lower group.
Okay.
So it breaks down every standard that I have them work on. So we were working on time, so I focused on time. We have other standards. We were working on fractions, and I can see like, and it also has like, it's broken down into the time frame too. So if I want to restrict it to the most recent time, then I can see, oh, she's not doing so well. I might have to push her down, even though I thought she was showing a little bit more growth.
Okay.
So I use
Okay.
Prodigy actively.
Okay, so my question is, for example, the fraction equivalent. You have 38 questions,
Mm-hmm.
and
And they're broken down into these. So equivalent fractions using circles, determining if fractions on the number line are equal.
what is the percentage?
So the percentage is how many she got correct. So out of the 3 questions, she averaged 2 minutes on each question.
So this is one student.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you get the report for every student that's logged in.
Yep.
So you
I
have your
all
whole
my
class
students.
listed. Okay.
And this is my homeroom. So I have the other homeroom too. Or
Okay.
Mr. Henniger's homeroom.
Okay. So do you have a way to go back and look at the questions, how the questions are asked, or
I think they give me examples of how they're formed, but not the exact question.
Okay.
so it's all like multiple choice, something like they have to just click it.
Some of them are drop down, some of them are like fill in.
Mm-hmm.
It all depends on the type, and some of them are multiple choice.
Okay. And then in your experience from working with the curriculum and then knowing the level of questioning that's being asked in the curriculum versus Prodigy, is there a big difference?
Not necessarily. I've even had students come up to me like, Ms. Habtemriam, this same question I saw it on. They're talking about the unit test. They're like, I saw it on Prodigy, and I was like, oh, that's excellent. So you have practice with it already.
Okay.
Okay, so if you are using this to differentiate instruction, how would you do that?
So basically, like if I go to my planner, I can create it, and I can create like a quiz or a series of questions. I'm sorry, and when I click next, it's asking me how many questions I want, and then I can select what students I want to do those select questions.
Does it give you the level of rigor? Like,
No,
okay,
that's what I would have to select.
okay,
So there's like multiplication word problems, division word problems, and then there's like a mix operations word problems. I may give that to my higher group and then work with just the one operation with my lower groups first.
Okay.
So that's how I set it up on Prodigy.
Okay, and then the last question I have, probably in reference to our Prodigy questions, is a lot of times when you're looking at them in small groups, you'll see both of maybe your red and your green group or your blue group. Both of them are working at the computer at the same time. Is that the way it's planned, or are they choosing to spend more time on the computer versus the seat work that you may be assigning? How does that work?
It depends on the timing.
Okay.
So if blue group is working on, say, centers, some of them are supposed to be on Prodigy, some of them are not. But some of them quickly finish their centers just so they can get on Prodigy because they're just so excited to use that.
Okay.
But it all depends. So I would say that a lot of my students choose to rush through their work just to get to Prodigy, or sometimes they don't do their work just to get to Prodigy.
Okay.
Because they know that's their last thing to do. So I have to work on.
And then what do you think? That's pretty key. So what do you think you can do to slow them down a little bit so that they give the full attention to the task that you're assigning? Because you said that was kind of a concern. That sometimes they're rushing through. Are they rushing through and making careless errors? And then how do you think you could fix that?
I tried to let them know that their work that they have to turn in is graded. It's used for a grade. Prodigy, I'm not grading.
Okay.
So that's on them. I'm try to make it more interesting to them so that they want to do the work and then get to Prodigy. Some of them are just more interested in Prodigy.
Okay.
So I feel like letting them know that this is graded, this is not. This is your choice whether you want to get this done or not, because your grade is going to reflect what you do in my class.
Okay. So let's move to the second question. How do the objectives listed on the board connect to the standards being taught? So your standards, I think we took a copy of them and we dropped them on the back, so you can have a visual point of reference at this moment. So how do these connect to what you were doing in the classroom?
They didn't.
Okay.
And that was my mistake.
Okay.
So I take full responsibility for that. They were old objectives, and I just didn't change them that morning.
Okay, not a problem. So because then that happens too, and I appreciate your honesty, because then we can keep moving. So the next question, Mr. Guy.
Okay, so the next question is, when students are in their independent rotation, how can we increase the rigor associated with their task?
I actually graded their independent work.
Okay.
And a lot of them did not tell the time accurately. So when it comes to rigor, I feel like maybe these basics have to be completed first. They have to understand how to tell the time before I can move on to maybe word problems using time. So like my 3 first groups, so my low, my medium, and high group, I had a hard time grading these because I really thought they knew how to tell time.
And so what was the errors that they were making? So
when the clock gets closer to the hour, they think that it's that next hour already. So if it was like 11:57, they would think it was 12:57.
Okay.
Now, was there a pre-assessment for this one?
No.
Okay. So then that's important. Moving forward, the earlier you can identify the misconceptions that students have, the better chance you have of overcoming them in the time allotted based upon the theme pacing. So sometimes you have 10 days, sometimes you have 14 days, it varies. So the earlier you can get to the misconceptions, the better you're going to be. So essentially, if this was the first task, this was kind of their pre-assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then that's okay. So moving forward, when you start the unit, you want to start to ask questions like, what does your minute hand represent? What does your hour hand represent? And then how do we move around the clock in increments? Because they should tell you that it's 5 for every large tick mark and things of that nature. And then you may, depending upon the quality of your questions, you may get to those misconceptions like you just said. The closer that hour hand gets to 6, students automatically advance an hour. So since we know that that's the issue, what do you think we can do to fix it?
Definitely. Well, I did talk about that in small group, but some of the students work on independent work before they meet with me. So definitely doing a whole group lesson, having that pre-assessment down, and then trying to address misconceptions before I even get to them. So I knew that was going to be an issue, but since I taught it already in the beginning of the school year, and this is just a review, I kind of skipped over that, and that was on me again. But I did go over in small group, talking about, what happens when it's in between, or what happens when it's closer to this, and they said, it's always going to be the smaller number because it's still that hour.
Yep.
And I even had students explain it in further detail in small groups.
And another strategy you can use, if they completed this prior to coming to you, have them bring it. And then you can use that time to clarify the misconceptions that they have. A lot of times if the kids are strong enough to at least begin to tackle a task, and then maybe your second or third group, plan for them to bring their work so you can unpack it. Have a notebook to the side so you can kind of write down anecdotal notes. Maybe specifically, Daisy is struggling when the hour hand gets close to the 6, and as she advances an hour, while the whole group has this misconception. So you want to know what each kid can do specifically, and then what you can do to move the needle for that group. So sometimes bringing their work is a great strategy to kind of circumvent that. Ms. Nagai, you got anything?
Right, especially with, and we talked about this before also, especially with your first independent group, that this word, when they came to you yesterday, you should have.
I know.
With
that slipped my mind.
Right.
You did share that with me.
Right, and 2, it's also easier for them to correct their mistakes right there and there, and it sticks better in their mind if they can fix it right there. So that would be something that you can do. And also the same thing with Miss Sanchez. She will do the same thing.
And I spoke to her this morning and I shared with her this. So she decided, or we both decided, that she would review this in her center.
Okay, that's smart. So you all are tag team. Are you all setting aside time to plan?
Yes.
Okay, good. So then we've kind of transitioned already into our action steps, or identifying those areas that we kind of saw were concerned, and then we've given some pretty good strategies on how to fix it. Ms. Nagai, did we miss anything in the action step piece?
Oh, the rotation.
The timer.
Okay.
So I'm glad you were using the timer,
Mhm.
and it was working yesterday. We can continue to do that, and then give them time to clean up, wrap up, and then make them stand at the same time. Because yesterday, so make them stand at the same time, so everybody will rotate, so that you know who's going where.
And you might want to give them, especially for those kids, because computers, they never want to get off of the computers.
Right.
So you might want to give them like a 2-minute warning. So you ding, and then they know in 2 minutes it's going to be time to rotate. So you all can start to bring it down. And then one thing you mentioned up here in this first bullet was that some of the kids are finishing early.
Right.
What can we do to kind of support those kids so that their learning continues, and that they don't start to engage in off-task behaviors like conversing with other scholars who might need to focus on the content?
So usually for independent work, I have 2 things up, just in case, because I always have fast finishers and people who rush through their work. So after this, they were supposed to get on Google Classroom, and I had a link up for the groups.
Okay.
That was for them to kind of move on to the next thing, because they always ask me what's next, and I always tell them there's always 2 things for independent work: what's in the bin and usually what's on the Chromebook.
Okay.
So that was for them to continue their learning, and it was aligned with these standards as well.
Mhm.
So like red and yellow group were working on telling time to the minute, blue and green group were working on elapsed time with the visual analog clocks.
My only concern with that is if this group is doing independent work with paper and
Mhm.
pencil, right? But then they finish it in less than 10 minutes, and then they have a choice of using the Chromebook. So then everybody, like yesterday, like almost everybody's using Chromebook. So which group is using a Chromebook? So my suggestion would be limit the, like if this group is using Chromebook, this group should not be using Chromebook.
Okay.
And then we could just see how it works. Because sometimes, because they know that they're being supervised, but you being in a group, it makes it harder for you because you don't want to stop the learning of the group. So it can make it harder for you to manage those individuals who are some distance away from you. So a great way to kind of identify who's on task and who isn't. If we have 3 groups and one group is, or 4 groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then one group is with Ms. Sanchez, one group is with me. That leaves us with 2. So they can complete all of their sheet work or their class work that's going to be graded in one group, and then their next rotation is computer. So then that way you can immediately look up and see who's on task and who isn't, because you know who's in what group and who isn't. Anything else?
So what day, let me ask you this so that what day did you, because we said Friday,
Mm-hmm.
but what day did you,
Thursday.
You said Thursday.
Yeah. Thursday.
So you're planning with Sanchez on
morning.
Thursday in the morning at 8:30?
Yeah. Well, we both usually get here before 8:30. So
Before 8:30, because keep in mind, Thursdays we have staff meeting
Mm-hmm.
on Thursdays. So
If you all are getting here early, then it shouldn't be an issue. Just make sure that you keep enough time allotted to make sure you get through what you intend to get through, and if you don't, just be accountable to each other about coming back, because the co-teaching model works well when the teachers who are working get work together, and you all have kind of set the stage in terms of the co-teaching model of the give and take that happens in the classroom naturally. So just staying consistent to it is a good idea.
yeah, communication is really key. Even though we have our collaborative planning on Thursdays, you still have to plan with her.
Yeah, we usually talk every morning.
Okay.
Like, what went well yesterday, what didn't, how can we fix it today?
Okay. So I think we touched everything, right? So your next, because you are officially done with your formal observations. Congratulations on that.
Yes.
So now everything is going to be informal. So we already set the date at the bottom. Your next informal observation by Nagaya and I, maybe myself or maybe just Nagaya, depending upon how it goes. But we will be accountable to someone, at least one of us being present in your space on the 26th. Okay? You got any questions for us?
Nope.
You sure?
Yes.
Positive.
Yep.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was 18 minutes. That's not bad.